your goal with any cold outreach is, let me just get a response, right? A lot of people, I feel like right now, are getting inundated, and you hear pretty often, at least I do, that cold email is not doing super hot right now. And I think it's because people feel just like being sold to all the time. And so our cold emails are now just like one question: hey, what CRM are you using? Or what do you use for project management? Nothing else. And just getting a response to get the ball rolling opens up the conversation, and that's the biggest thing.
Grant, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing super well. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. You have an interesting setup. We were discussing that you're recording this from a train station in Italy, which is way cooler than what I'm doing. So,
yeah, it takes an arm and a leg to get here, but it's the only co-working spot near the city that I'm in right now, so it works.
Yeah, well, we are setting the stage for it sets a cool stage for the conversation, I think. Just, I don't know, puts me in a good mood thinking about it. Anyway, we're here to discuss kind of a lot of your expertise in automations, right? That's really what you've built your career on, as being the go-to person for business automations. And, you have a lot of kind of sub-niches where you even have deeper expertise, besides just really, all businesses need automations, of course. And then what I'm most interested in discussing are marketing automations, sales automations, lead generation automations, and those can take place within your CRM. Those can take place with triggers that happen on the social media platforms. Maybe there's even automations you have when it comes to producing your own content. I don't really know. But that's what I'm excited to get into with you today. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. I'm excited to talk about some tools that we're experimenting with, and different automations, intent data, CRMs. There's so many different directions to go into. So it'll be fun to jam.
Let's start. Yeah, let me ask about intent data. What are some automations you're doing with intent data?
Yeah, so I think that there's obviously page visits and who's checking out your blog and signing up for a webinar and all those things. And now there's our B2B and these different tools that can grab people who are visiting your sites, grab their emails and their LinkedIns, and you can put those into the CRM. But one area that I'm really focused on is how can we get intent signal from the social media platforms themselves. And there's a lot that can be done with tools like Phantom Buster, which will scrape profile visitors and likes and comments, obviously new followers. But those 4 data points can create a bit of a profile around who's enjoying and engaging with your content and who might be interested in the services that you're offering or the product you're offering. And then there's another tool called Dream Data that I did a demo for recently, and my jaw has not been dropped as significantly as that one was. It was super impressive. If you're running LinkedIn ads, I highly, highly recommend checking out Dream Data. That they've got a free tier. The paid tier is a bit pricey, but like if you're spending money on LinkedIn ads, it's pretty impressive how you can see customer journey per profile or per account you're targeting. I'm not there yet, but it was awesome.
How do you think about organizing kind of all of the automations that you have across the board? Like, do you just have one centralized list where you kind of keep track of everything? Or do you just kind of think you just accumulate with time and then hope things don't break? Like, what's the middle ground there?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we track everything in Airtable. We have an Airtable base that also tracks every time an automation runs for each of our partners. So we have like the automation log, and we roll those up to see how many minutes, dollars, et cetera, were saved per automation per month, for example. But then you can also do dependencies. So you could say like automation 1 is the predecessor to automation 4, 5, and 6, and show that dependency. And you can use some of the views like the Gantt chart view or the org chart view. That's a little tip. The org chart view in Airtable is really good for visualizing dependencies in automations. So we try to do those things per partner.
How are you coming up with the marketing automations that you're implementing?
I mean, it always starts from what's the goal, right? And I think we're trying to focus mostly on our strength, which is around social media, like LinkedIn engagement. So I've gone pretty deep personally on Phantom Buster, and I like to think I'm a power user there. But when people come to us and say, I'd like to get more marketing data into the CRM, it really depends on what are they doing for their channels, like what channels are working really well and what would those signals be. And if we have API access directly from a platform or a tool, like if you've got webinar signups or it's a form fill out, obviously those are typically like a HubSpot form or a type form. Those things can easily be routed back to the CRM. but it's the more niche or things that aren't easily accessible, like the LinkedIn and the Twitter APIs. Those are nearly impossible dev chairs to get, as we found out. And so using tools like Phantom Buster are kind of the good third-party tools that we can use to get that data into either a centralized base like Airtable, and then once someone has met a like intent threshold is what we call it, then we can send it to the CRM, or we can just send everything to the CRM in the first place.
How did you get into doing all this automation work?
Yeah, that's a fun story. So I was looking for a job. I was doing an internship in Spain coming out of my master's, and I was looking for other opportunities. But really, I found the tweet that Sampar put out about, hey, is anyone looking for a community of entrepreneurs? And at that time, I was working on a sports betting hedge fund. I was like, yeah, I would love to have other people around me. Spain doesn't really have a ton of entrepreneurship. And so I applied to join Hampton. And in my interview, I asked, they told me it's going to be $3,000 a year to join. I was like, I don't have that kind of money. Can I wash dishes for my dinner? Can I work it off? They said, no one's ever asked us that before, but no. I said, okay, great. And so I followed up by email. And, after I was denied formally, I said, if there's anything I can do to help, let me know. And he said, email me next month. That was Joe Spicer who interviewed me. And for 3 months of me following up, eventually they said, do you know anything about Zapier? I said, no, but I've always wanted to learn. That was it. So that's how I got my first contract and then the first full-time position there.
Why did they reach out to you? What was the need they had? Where they're like, we need a Zapier guy.
Yeah, they had the agreement that they wanted to automate as much as possible to eliminate as much admin and really as much, I think, management as they could. I think that was definitely a goal, was keep the team lean, have a bunch of killers on the squad, but remove as much of the manual context switching and task redundancy that slows down those types of people. And so that's why they ultimately thought someone that could take up automation as a first hire would set up every other person after that as kind of like a compounded benefit. So I think that was their intention. And I came on along with 2 people soon after that were on the sales team. And so the 3 of us did some sales, but I was mostly focused on automation, and that ability to just have someone to say, hey, I want a lead to show up in this table in Airtable, or I want this data to flow into HubSpot at this time, or can I get Stripe data to pop in here? Having someone full-time for them was really beneficial because it was always near instant, right? Like that was my only focus. So it helped everyone move faster.
And then again, all that stuff, because you're not there anymore, but theoretically, 10 to hundreds of automations that you set up could still just be running.
Humming along. It's a fun thing. Like we set up a notification for every 100 people that joined Hampton, or every 100th person, I should say, that joined Hampton. There was a notification that played a Big E song. And when we hit a major milestone, I'll say, one of the guys that's still in the company sent me the screenshot of I had a little logo of like a Grant robot as the Slack icon. So they sent that screenshot to me, and that was very fun. Even though I'd already left, it was still running.
That's awesome. What are some automations that you're setting up for yourself, kind of in your own lead generation?
Yeah, good question. I would say most of it is around LinkedIn and kind of scraping some of that intent signal. So I've talked about followers, likes, comments, and profile visits, and centralizing that into an Airtable base. Once we have someone that reaches a threshold of that intent, I guess we call it, we'll send a LinkedIn outreach flow, which would be auto connect, auto DM with 3 sequenced messages. So that's one that's been helping out a lot. And when someone reaches that LinkedIn outreach flow, then they move formally into the CRM. So it's like, hey, we know this person's at least somewhat interested. Let's reach out. And then there's standard ones like we're doing some cold email, nothing crazy. It's like 20 to 40 emails a day just to kind of test messaging and things like that. But if someone responds, notify the Slack channel immediately so that we can get something response quickly. And I think that there is value in that low-hanging fruit. It's like if everyone is lead-centric or trying to have that first response very quickly, it also sends a good or puts a good foot forward for that relationship to say, hey, we're really attentive to those things. So I think even though those automations aren't like saving 60 minutes a week or something like that, they're still or even, I mean, 60 minutes is probably pretty feasible for that, but call it hours a week, it's still that you're getting that first touch really well catered and it's on time, on point, so that the first impression is really strong. So I think there is value, and even though they're not super big and flashy, they still do add value to the customer experience.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've identified two distinct categories, and there could be more than two types of automations. And I kind of go through this similar kind of category of value when explaining certain sales conversations. Like there's certain automations that are just, you were doing this and now you don't have to. And then there's other automations that are, there's no way you could ever do this. But now this is happening because of automations. So the first one being, you were, let's say you just have a template, every cold email that says, sure, send me a sample, or sure, send me the information video. If their response contains that video, or like even like the tools like instantly classify as positive, you just automatically send the reply. Like that's very simple. It's saving you time. But with the LinkedIn stuff, like you really can't do that yourself. I mean, you could export the data to like a spreadsheet and accumulate the things, but like that's not even built. Like LinkedIn doesn't give you that information. You can't just like export all of the engagement, and it would be very difficult.
Totally.
So now it's like a new unlock completely from that category.
Yeah. I mean, you can't, it would take a lot of time to copy and paste each and every one of the likes, each and every one of the comments into a spreadsheet, aggregate that by profile, decide when it hits a certain threshold. Like, yeah, that would take a serious, like that could be a full-time role in and of itself, right? Most likely for global talent to be scraping all of those engagements. Like, I think that's something that would take hours a day if you're posting content pretty regularly. So I think that is definitely, I like the way you categorize that between the two of things that just wouldn't be possible versus we're doing them faster or better. I completely agree. That's the whole system when it's glued together. That is a role in and of itself.
Exactly. I think with the, engagement data specifically, and you mentioned context switching when you're discussing like the benefit that Hampton saw. The speed to lead, the response time, like if you're actually going to get any work done, you just kind of have to ignore the notifications. Like getting work done and notifications don't mix well together at all. So if you're just saying like, I want to reply to these, you give the illusion of being super quick and responsive, which makes a massive difference in terms of just still being top of mind. So if that person's in the state of mind where they're thinking about that thing, they haven't like fully been distracted without interfering with your day-to-day work. So it's all about, a lot of business is just, and this is not an original idea that I've come up with by any stretch, but a lot of business is just continuing to accumulate leverage. Like how can your business have a bigger impact without you personally being stretched more thin, like incredibly thin? And there's only so many pieces to that, but like, and the person who really made this popular was Naval in Eric Jorgensen's book, but it talks about like the types of leverage or, capital and media and code. And then people is kind of the other one. But what we're really focused on in this episode is content, and automations are code, but you don't actually have to write code, but you are deploying code, right? You're training a robot to handle a series of tasks for you. And when you pair that with content, it's like you can be sleeping, right? You can be totally asleep, and someone's reading what you posted because you spent the time weeks earlier creating all of the content. And then because someone read this content that you created, now you're automatically reaching out to them and starting a conversation. And all of this is happening while you're sleeping, eating breakfast, or like doing some other important task in your job. So it's a very powerful combination.
It really is. I think that's a really good way to frame it on the connection between content and the code leverage, because when someone can move through that awareness to maybe not even taking action, but you're stepping forward first, it shows that you are almost, it feels very personal, because you're like, oh, wow, I really do see that you are in and around my orbit. We should talk. And the thing that I tell people who are deploying this set, like we've kind of bundled up those automations into one system. If you're deploying that, I always say when you do that first LinkedIn outreach, you're not trying to sell someone or trying to get someone on a download or, signing up for a webinar on the first message. It's just, hey, I saw that you're engaging with my content, thought we should connect. Feels very genuine. And then the next one is more open-ended question. Hey, what CRM are you using? Are you thinking about automation right now? How does it affect your business plan? Trying to get something going. And you can get that ball going with just any response. That's obviously the best case scenario. Worst case is message 2, message 3 comes down the pipe and it's like, hey, we're working on this thing. Does this seem interesting to you? And that's when you kind of start getting into more like soft sell. Here's a webinar, here's a workshop, whatever. But those first 2, the outreach message and the first DM, really are about, saw that you're engaging with my content. You're putting the first foot forward. It feels very personal. And then the second one is really about opening the conversation and something open-ended that is not aggressive by any means. I found that to be a much better approach. And I think it was Chris Connor or something like that on Twitter, who I read a thread from his cold email strategy. And he's like, people don't care about the hard sell, or maybe they care about the case study in some cases, but your goal with any cold outreach is, let me just get a response, right?
Exactly.
And if a lot of people, I feel like right now are getting inundated, and you hear pretty often, at least I do, that cold email is not doing super hot right now. And I think it's because people feel just like being sold to all the time. And so our cold emails are now just like one question. Hey, what CRM are you using? Or what do you use for project management? Nothing else. And if we can get a response on that 1 out of every 50 times, 1 out of every 100 times, obviously people have even less, but like just getting a response to get the ball rolling opens up the conversation. And that's the biggest thing.
Exactly. This is something I kind of find myself saying all the time now. A lot of just marketing fundamentals, like the more value you provide, and it's marketing fundamentals and it's human psychology fundamentals, and it's kind of one and the same sometimes, but the more value that you provide to someone before asking for anything, the better, right? Mm-hmm. And just the longer you feel like you've known somebody before asking for anything, the better. And the more it just comes across organically. So something you don't post something on LinkedIn. Like, I think people kind of understand this really well on social, but don't understand it as well over email. Like, I try to position most of the newsletters for our clients, and I say I, but like really it's my team, right? Our team really tries to position most of the clients that we work with where the newsletter is something people would want to read regardless of their purchasing intent from the clients, right? It's just like something that, like a lot of emails in email marketing, once you've bought the thing and you're no longer in market for the thing, you have no interest in continuing to read it. Because it's like, what's the value here? I've already bought it. I already got the coupon. Like, let's just check out and be done here. We want to make newsletters and publications and weekly emails that are like, I don't think I'm ever going to purchase from this person. I already have purchased from them, but this just continues to be useful, educational, valuable, interesting. And like on social, people understand that. Like, you're not posting something only so a direct response gets a sale. It's like you're just posting something so that people continue to follow you forever and like continue to see you as that authority.
Yep.
And then just naturally having those calls to action in there, people just come to the conclusion on their own. But then seeing who the people who are within that are showing the data, it's powerful.
It totally is. And the one that comes to mind, honestly, is like, I don't know if you've ever subscribed to the Justin Welsh newsletter. He's just throwing out LinkedIn tips once a week, but every single one is valuable, and it's like, if one day I decide that I want to go deeper on my own professional development of my LinkedIn stuff, instead of going after ghostwriting or using an AI tool, if I decide, yes, I want to do my own writing, this is going to be my thing, then I know exactly where I would turn to, because everything that he sends me every week is super valuable. So it's like, that is the delayed gratification of content, and bundled up back to a previous conversation, inside code with that distribution method. Like, there's so many upside points there for him and for you guys building out these newsletters, delaying that gratification of the sale or the meeting booked because you're providing something valuable. It increases the likelihood of sharing, and it ultimately leads to healthy pipeline distributed over every month to come, right? That's valuable.
And then the other part of it is just the multiple touch points. So it's funny, like, I follow Justin. I've not really gone on his email list, but maybe like this is the conversation. This is like that 18th time I've been reminded of him, that he's like, you know what? Because now suddenly I am in this business where, beforehand I was just like most other people. Like, I'm working for this other company. I have this situation. LinkedIn's great because it's nice to have followers and look sophisticated. But now it's like, okay, no, a core part of my business is helping people be successful on LinkedIn. right? Because we do LinkedIn content, we do email content. So now suddenly I'm in a different situation, and then someone reminds me of Justin Welsh, who I've already heard of, but I've just forgotten about. But now I'm in the market all of a sudden, and he's already built up that authority because one, you're someone that I know, like, and trust, and you're speaking highly of what he's talking about. And I just already in the past have seen him before. And so now I'm like, oh yeah. And I show up super warm, and it's just the long game. It's the delayed gratification.
Totally. And it's the flywheel. Every single time you put something out, there's a chance that someone will forward it. Someone will share with a buddy, just like I am right now. That's the ultimate goal of writing something valuable. So it's all connected. And I think that you're in a pretty good spot right now with building out, having that vision for the newsletter clients that you have. I think that's an awesome goal and something to aspire to with every time you press send.
This is a question I tried yesterday on a podcast, and it went well. So we'll see if it's 2 for 2. What's the most successful piece of content you've ever produced?
I think the best one that I had was when I announced that I was leaving Hampton and starting on my own. That did pretty well for me. I think it was a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of people in Hampton who were supporting me in that, because I think everyone at Hampton has had to make that decision at some point of like, I'm going to leave a secure thing and try something on my own. So I got a lot of support there. And then the more recent option that I think can be taken, has a lesson for some people, is that the most recent one that did well was when I posted about how I got my beer sponsor for my wedding. So that was a personal post in the middle of a bunch of business content. I think that was refreshing for people. Got some likes, got some good impressions, but it reminded me that there's a need to always have that human aspect and that personal story within all of the content stuff, or the business content, and trying to lead with value and all that stuff. It is also valuable for myself to humanize my content, my digital persona, by writing things that are happening in my life, and writing about core values on the team or new accomplishments. Like those are good things to mention too.
We did a podcast with this guy named Andrew Pierno. I don't know if you follow him. Mm-hmm. And he buys SaaS companies, is what he does. So he just buys SaaS companies and has like a SaaS holding company. And he had a newsletter for a long time just basically breaking down all of their deals. And importantly, discussing like all the ones that went bad and explaining what went wrong. And it's just, people don't like when someone's content is just exclusively like, here's why, like, here, just plain business. Here's why life's great. Here's everything's amazing. Just feels dishonest and incomplete and just not real. And so when it's just, I think on Twitter, especially, really on any platform, when people put that personal aspect and like show some vulnerability, here's something that didn't go well. Not that your story is necessarily something that didn't go well. It's just, we're humans here. There's different ways to communicate. We're humans here behind the screen. Whether that's by like being vulnerable and sharing a story that went well or that went poorly, or just discussing something completely unrelated, but just cool. And just like, oh, you're a real person that likes to have fun. Just even communicating like you like to have fun.
Yeah.
Makes a big difference in breaking through the noise.
Totally. Some of it, I always think about like, should I curse in an email or say something that I would actually say in like a real conversation? And I've been leaning into those little personality things. It's like, they're not uncommon for people. Obviously, everyone's got their own choice of how to use language, but like writing it down on LinkedIn or in an email, I'm just like, oh, that doesn't feel good, because who knows how someone's going to interpret it when they don't know me, right? And one time I wrote something in, like, it was my first or second interaction with a guy, and I wrote something sarcastic, and I wrote at the bottom like, you don't know me, but that was supposed to be really funny. Like, so sometimes it's important to put those things in there too. But actually, I do remember one other piece of content that did well, and it wasn't my own. It was Cody Schneider. I know you said that you were having him on the podcast soon. I was on his podcast today, and that has led to.
You went to Cody's podcast? I gotta check that out.
Yeah, it was a good one.
Yeah, I'm interviewing Cody in 2 hours, so small world.
There you go. But I did that one in Italy as well, and I've had like three or four pretty qualified people apply to work for GrantBot because of that one. And I just hired one guy in Brazil because of it. So that was like, I don't know if I can quantify the ROI of hiring someone really high quality. But that is definitely a very successful piece of content for me, just from that one hire. That was awesome.
What did you talk about? Did you like advertise that you're hiring, or how did that happen?
No, I've had people reach out just saying like, I think what you're talking about is pretty interesting as far as where the puck's going for automation. We talked about one idea was like how to have AI prompt you to do essentially podcast style questions that if you were to record it, you could then turn it into snippets and tweets and LinkedIn posts, et cetera. Because I think a lot of people, myself included, it's like when someone's asking me questions, I'm happy to talk about automation. I can pull out of brain what all the different things that I've been picking up on from previous partners and different automations we're building. But it's because I'm being asked. Whereas if I just sit down with a piece of paper and a pencil, I'm like, what am I going to write about today? It's like that blank page problem. But if you have the journalistic AI asking you questions as if they were doing a podcast interview, you can start to get some snippets and some ideas from that. So we went pretty deep on that idea and just thinking about partly how you would build it, why it's valuable, and what conversational AI will allow people to do as far as producing more content in the future.
It's funny you mentioned that. We had a similar conversation, you and I, yesterday. We were just talking kind of offline, just catching up. But with, like, I have an editor, full-time editor on the team now, and his queue, like, he worked through his whole queue of work. And I was like, I need to make more for him. And today I've got a lot of podcasts, which is great. But like Monday, I was like, I don't want to have nothing to do for 2 days. I was like, and I don't want to like sit here and script content because I have like other things on my to-do list. And I was like, what? Literally, I was like, if I was going on this podcast, I kind of had the same realization. Like, I can just answer as if, like, there's so many weird things that we just need the situation. Because we were talking about yesterday about like how to do role play and like sales. And like, do we need like to have a actual sales coach in order for us to do role play? Or can we just do role play like against like the mirror? Like, I think we both can hear, and I say we both, really anyone who's been on a sales call that's led to them buying. Like, you've seen effective sales. You hear something and you can be fairly objective with yourself and honest. Like, this is actually persuasive. Just like with your own writing. If you read it out loud, you're like, this is garbage or this is good. Yeah. Or you hear it played back to yourself talking and giving a presentation. You're like, this is actually good quality or this is terrible quality. Like, I don't need anyone's permission. I just literally need to sit down and do it. And it's helpful when you have like an AI or some workflow kind of pre-designs. But
yeah, you're double tapping on this. Like, so you're so right, man. Like, I needed to hear that. Yeah, I needed to hear this again because I'm thinking about it. It's like, I literally, if I just chopped out 2 hours even 2 hours once a week to really go deep on one sales call per week, like the growth,
like studying your own film,
is just like that is so exponential, right? Just to be able to go line by line, this is how and this is what you said. It's like, you hear a question, you don't like your answer, write the perfect answer, say it out loud, move on to the next one. And like,
and what does that become, right? That becomes beautiful content as well.
Exactly. So like, it's stupid how valuable that is, but I get sucked into the problem of the day and like, what's the next thing that we're doing, and does our new content management system and ClickUp work? It's like, those are the types of questions that I end up going down when I know that if I just took 2 hours to go through a sales call in that level of detail, I'll end up much better, right? And it's probably a higher ROI than paying for the coach, because just like, I don't know what your study tactics were in college, but like for me, I know that if I reread the textbook and compared it to my notes and then wrote a new set of notes with the full set of information, and I kind of consolidated all my thoughts into a new bullet point, that was where I was able to make the most progress in learning. So it's like, review your call, write the new sentence, distill it down into, this is what you do when this types of questions are asked. Like, that's how my brain makes those connections, right? So I needed you to say that again. So I'm not going to do it right now because that would be disrespectful, but I will be going after this call and putting a 2 hour block on my calendar, because that would be, that is needed. That is a really, if anyone else is listening to this and thinking, what can I do to up my sales game? Take this as your sign. That is a good use of 2 hours.
It's a question of like just the weird psychology of like permission and accountability and motivation. I found this guy on Instagram. His name's Garrett Salem. He's like fitness coach. I told you yesterday that I hurt my back, so I've just been doing a lot of stationary bike, and I just do a lot of mindless. That's the mindless time on social media, just to make the miles pass more quickly. And I found him doing some reels about all of his cocktails, etc., like fitness cocktails, like pomegranate juice and some random nonsense. I do like pomegranate juice, but he had this one video that I thought was really good. That was called the 10-year test for your fitness program. So yeah, this is a fitness program that you don't think would be sustainable every week for the next 10 years, then you shouldn't even start it. You want to get on the fitness program that you could not change. Working out 7 days a week, twice a day, you're not going to do that every day you're not going to follow that program for 10 years straight.
Yep.
Working out 3 times a week for an hour each time, you could probably actually keep that up and keep that streak alive for 10 years straight. And I think a lot about the parallel with kind of content versus hiring an agency as well. It's and the same thing with the sales calls and the accountability. Hiring someone helps you kind of keep a cadence, because so much of what matters is sticking with whatever you pick, just picking something that you'll stick with for a long time, rather than saying, I'm going to publish a tweet every day for the next month and then just not tweeting again for the rest of the year. Right? It's better just be I'm just going to do weekly. But even weekly, sometimes for some people, is hard to do because it's just not necessarily your highest priority in the role that you're in. It's a priority that it gets done, but not a priority that you do it. And then if it's something that's going to slip, then you're not going to keep it up for 10 years. So it's so funny how some of these things that we know are so important, it's just so difficult to consistently continue to show up and do unless there's some external system. So that's a lot of what I'm trying to solve. I mean, I think what you're doing is the same thing with automation, right? Just it'd be great to block off 3 hours. Again, this is assuming the business owner or the person knows Zapier, has some level of proficiency with Make or these tools. It'd be great to block off 3 hours because I know this will save me 15 minutes a week for the rest of the amount of time I'm in business. But it's so difficult to do that. And that's a lot of the benefit of what we've created in terms of the productized service type agencies is yours is a lot different position than mine. Mine's mostly I do think we write great emails. Obviously, you're an expert. You could write a great email too. It's just, are you going to be consistent with this? Do you think that you're going to hit this Monday, 7 a.m. send every week for the next 52 weeks? Right? We're going to, because that's what we're promising to do. And if we don't do that, you should fire us. But you're not going to fire yourself for missing that deadline. You're going to give yourself if I came to you with an excuse, you're going to be that's BS. I'm paying you literally just to do this. But if you come to yourself with an excuse, you're you're going to buy it because it's from you. And it's probably a good excuse because, yeah, you did have to take your kid to school that day. You're not going to not take your kid to school. Yeah. So I don't know how you think about that in your business.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. It's you as the founder, business owner, CEO, CMO, whoever it is at the upper levels of a business, your attention is being pulled in 20 different ways, especially for a founder, right? And you can have a calendar block. I can't tell you how many calendar blocks I've missed, right? It's just part of life. Something, I don't have any kids, but maybe it's the bus, my bike broke one day. I missed an hour and a half of work because of that, right? And so even though it's not happening every day, there are little bike breaks every day that happen that can distract you from what you said you were going to do. And it's the same thing with automation. It's you're probably not going to set aside an hour or 2 hours or schedule time on your team's calendars to think about all the what it or the if then statements that turn into automation, right? But if you put an hour on with me and I pepper you with questions for an hour, I'm going to get all the things I need to then start mapping out your processes and get you some automations that can be built the next week. So it's the same thing. It's you can either tell yourself you're going to be accountable for that one thing, or and let your soup du jour pull you in all the different directions. Or you can say, this person is going to do this thing for my business, and I know that's going to move the ball forward because we're going to get more eyeballs on the brand, or we're going to have less time spent on manual tasks. The team will be in flow more. We're going to be profitable faster. I completely agree. And it's the positioning of the agency to say, we are sole focused on this business outcome. And that's why you're coming to us. And you could go hire someone, and then that person has to be trained and onboarded, or you can have us use our tested system to get that value to you as quickly as possible. I think that's the other side of agency versus in-house. It's we have a system to pull the value out. you don't need to onboard us. You don't like, we onboard you. That's that's part of it. Right. So completely agree.
Yeah, I think this is the same thing as kind of Justin Welsh and everything in the progression of what happens with your content, right? Content, I think of as one aspect of it, not all of it, maybe one pillar of it is building a series of beliefs, right? So maybe someone's listening to this podcast and they're like, wow, that automation sounds useful. That automation sounds useful. I definitely don't have my Airtable set up correctly. And yeah, my LinkedIn, like I've never even heard of Phantom Buster, but like I spent 2 minutes on the landing page because of this, and this looks great. So now they have belief number one. It's like automation could be useful for me. Mm-hmm. And then there's just that inevitable period where if it's a smart person and listen to this, let's say smart, but I don't want to say smart, but arrogant, smart, but arrogant, I guess. And they're like, that sounds useful, but I'm just going to go do that. Right. Because they certainly could. If they had 15 hours uninterrupted, they could probably figure out Phantom
Buster. If they've got the time, for sure.
Right. So that's phase two. It's like, thank you, Grant, for giving me these good ideas. I'm going to go do them. And then what's going to happen is 7 days to 6 months of them snoozing the task on the to-do list. And then eventually they give in and say they've needed to do it the whole time. They agree that it's important, but they finally concede the belief that they have time to do it. And then that's when they reach out to you 6 months later. So the important thing of the content is like 6 months later, you're still who they think of when they finally do give in. You remind them about it again. You put up one more post that's like, you have yet another case study. Here's how I just booked this awesome retainer. And the conversation was started because of a Phantom Buster DM. They're like, shit, I can't believe it's taken me 6 months and I haven't done this. If I haven't been done by now, I'm not going to get to it. What's his number? Let me call him.
Yep, completely agree. It's being top of mind for that whole thing until the buying window opens up. And I'm curious, kind of switching gears, but still on the agency side of things, you told me that you've kind of built this new platform for your productized service. What does like onboarding look like for you guys, having it be so tone and it's a marketing thing, right? It's like, how do you solve for tone and all that writing when you're doing your ghostwriting work?
I'll tell you what's, not necessary because we don't turn clients away who don't have this. But when someone does have published content, it's like a godsend because then you read it and you compare it to what we produce something, we look at what they have, and we're like, no, this doesn't sound like the same person. Or like, yes, this literally like sounds like the same person. Are you familiar with Nicholas Cole?
Yeah.
And Dickie Bush? Yeah. So he has a chapter in his book all about tone. And what's kind of funny, it's like a very much a human ego thing. Like the whole, this doesn't sound like me is almost, if you write something good, people are going to be like, that sounds like me. Cause everyone has this view of themselves as like smart and good at writing, right? Yeah. Everyone thinks that like everyone thinks if they take, unless they're like, I'm a terrible writer, please write for me, which is a different situation because then they're just thinking that it's good. But if they think they're a good writer and you show them good writing, and what does good writing mean, right? Like factual and concise and all of those things. I mean, there's a couple stylistic things. Like, are they someone, like you said, there's like a couple his book's called The Art and Business of, he has a couple books. He has a book about how to build a ghostwriting agency. And he details his whole experience and he breaks down like 4 archetypes of client voices. And you have like the F-bomber. And it's like, as long as you curse in there, they're going to be like, this sounds exactly like me. Right? It's David Goggins, right? You're like, F this, F that. And they're like, okay, you got it. Mm-hmm. And then there's other people who do like to be more of like the storyteller. So if you tell stories in your writing, and again, it's proper writing with proper mechanics, then they're just going to be like, this sounds like me. If it's factual and it's good and it's interesting, they're going to be like, this is great. It sounds like me. And if it's bad, and more importantly, if you demonstrate understanding of their subject matter, like if you understand their subject matter and you write well, they're gonna be like, this is great. This sounds exactly like me. Even if their writing's terrible, they're gonna be like, this is perfect. So they more care about it being good than it matching exactly like their tone. And again, some of it's obvious, right? If they're playful and your writing's not playful, then like you screw it up. Mm-hmm. But for most of the B2B stuff that we do, a lot of people were taking them from 0 to something. So like there is no voice to match. It's just like, did we make a mistake about describing their industry, or did we like explain something? Do we sound like an outsider, or do we sound like an insider? If you sound like an outsider, you're in bad shape. But if you sound like an insider, they're pretty happy.
Yeah, makes sense. It's interesting that psychology, marketing often go hand in hand. But when it comes to my tone, I went into this thinking, yeah, I've got my style, but realistically, it's like you're right. There probably is just if I resonate with the length of the sentences and the pace of the writing, then that's probably going to be enough for me to be like, yeah, that works for me.
It's like everyone thinks they're smart. So if they think the writing sounds smart, they're like, this sounds like me. It's like, yes, it does. Good job. And I don't mean to like say that to like belittle people, but it's like, I'd be the same way. Like if someone wrote something for me, it's like, yeah, this is great. Like, I don't care if it sounds like me or not. Like, what does sound like me mean? Like, well, I think I'm smart. So if it sounds smart, it sounds like me. Right. It's a simplification, but it's kind of how people think.
No, 100%.
So yeah. Where are some ways, and we'll come up on the end here in a second, where are some ways people go wrong with automation?
Automating too soon in the context of my processes are changing right now. So someone comes to you and or comes to me in this case and says, I'd love to fix my client onboarding process. I say, great, let's get into it. So we spend 2 to 4 weeks doing interviews, making sure that we've got everything mapped out, who's responsible, who's blah, blah, blah. What's the automation going to do? And we present it, thumbs up, great. And then we're halfway through the build and the whole onboarding thing has changed because in those 6 weeks, the business model has changed. So that's something where like you need to know that your processes are going to be mature enough to last 6 months and know I've got something that's my company is stable enough and mature enough that we're not going to change a huge section of our business while it's being worked on by a third party. That is something that I think we are better at filtering out for now. It's like also asking someone if they've tried it before, why did it not work last time? Why will it work? Why will it work this time? Like founders often get it in their own way. So being very direct about like, you're not in the right stage of your business. Like come back when you're confident in this phase of the business for us to actually work on it. Or you've tried this before, it didn't work, and I'm not confident it's going to work this time either because you are still busy with other things. Like if I can't get an hour of your time over the next 2 weeks consistently, and consistently means like once a week, then it's not going to work out, right? Like you're the bottleneck for this process to work. So those are usually the two things. Like it does take time to do automation work. You have to really intimately know how the business works, which is why we do so many one-on-one interviews. And so it can't be like a Facebook ad agency where they're coming in and it's like, you're selling blue chew toys for dogs. We'll make ads with blue chew toys. Like, that's great. You don't need to really talk to anyone to produce 50 versions of that. With automations, you really need to intimately know the business, which is why productized services are really hard, meaning like 10 automations per month, not we're going to do these 5 automations. Those things are, I'm rambling a little bit, but
like, automation is not a unit.
It's not. Yeah, you really need to know the business, and like you can have 50 or 60 modules in a make scenario. You're going to need to know how each and every one of those impact the business.
Oh, Grant, you are the guy for automations. Where should people be checking you out, learning more about ideas you have, or getting in touch if they specifically are already ready to be like, yeah, screw doing that myself. But I know I need it, but I'm not the guy to do it.
Yeah, happy to talk to anyone in any stage of that journey. You can go to grantbot.co. That's our website. Book a call there. And I'm the only Grant Hushek on the internet or in existence that I'm aware of. So Grant Hushek on LinkedIn and Twitter. You should be able to find me pretty easy.
Amazing. Grant, thanks so much for doing this.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. Always good to jam.